Welcome to the Livfiit Listens podcast, a safe space of growth, personal development, and overall wellness with your host, Catania. Diving into the realms of all things health, conscious living, mental expansion, and much more, this podcast is designed to help you evolve into your best self and live fit. Let's get into the show. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Livfiit Listens podcast. Today, we're on episode 82, and this may be the most special episode ever. I've been trying to get this very special guest on this podcast pretty much ever since I started this podcast 2 years ago now. This has been very long awaited, very long anticipated. My father, Joe Catania. I cannot say enough good things about my dad. I admire him. I look up to him in so many ways. He is such an amazing role model for me. He's my hero and everything in between. There's so many things about him that inspires me, that motivates me, that helps to keep me going and helps me believe in all the potential that we have in life. Everything that he's been able to achieve in his lifetime has truly blown me away, and I just hope to be able to do half of what he has been able to do. And I feel so blessed to be his daughter and be able to learn from him. And I think the very least that I could do is share his guidance and share his wisdom with you all and with you guys listening. So I'm really excited to bring you guys this episode today. He was a little bit camera shy at first, like he's a little bit quieter than normal. I promise he's not this like flat in real life. He just was a little bit camera shy first time getting on here, but I'm so proud of him and I feel so appreciative towards him for actually coming up onto this episode. A little bit of background for him to give you some context. He grew up not really in a very abundant lifestyle, I would say, and he has now been able to grow and scale his own business and his own professional career into something bigger than he could have ever imagined. He is in the medical field, and so his life story of pretty much how he kind of came from nothing into creating something for his life just absolutely fascinates me, and it makes me so proud of him. And I just would love to share his story because I think he has so much valuable information and just lessons in the life that he's lived. He is the most dedicated, disciplined, hardest working person I truly think that I'll ever know. And I'm such a firm believer that that is why he is where he is today. So I just wanted to come on here and share his kind of pretty much his life story today and share some things that really helped him honestly break a lot of generational cycles for him, right? Like he grew up more so closer to poverty and he completely blew past that and has really created a life of abundance for himself and his family. He grew up with a father that was less present, I should say, than he is now. And so he's really been able to be an amazing dad to myself and my 3 other siblings. And he's also really broke the cycle from a more so relatively unhealthy family into someone that is super disciplined and focused with fitness and really values it in his life. So in this episode, we're going to be speaking on behalf of those kind of 3 main pillars of mindset and success, what it takes to be a good parent, and touching on how much your character is impacted by being disciplined in the gym and with your health and fitness. Livfiit Listens audience, I present to you none other than my beloved father, Joseph Catania. Joseph Catania, welcome to the chat. Okay, what you got? Joe, for real though, we're just chatting, okay? Just
okay, but
I look over, Joe's like,
well, what do you want me to do?
Just chillax. Okay. All right, you guys, we finally have the long-awaited, long-anticipated guest, my father, Joseph Catania. Welcome finally to Livfiit Listens podcast.
Well, it's good to be here, Livy. I appreciate you wanting to hear from me. But I'm not sure I have too much more to add to your podcast. So go ahead.
Let's just say we had to pull some teeth for him to get here. But, I believe that Joe, he's one of my biggest role models. And even aside to not put so much pressure on it, I just think Joe and I have some great conversations. And I always get value from pretty much anything Joe has to say. So I really wanted to share him because I'm very lucky to have him as a father. So I feel like it's my duty to share the privilege of Papa Joe, to the rest of the world. So we start off every podcast episode with gratitude. We share one thing that we're grateful for, Joe. So, do you want to start us off? One thing you're feeling really grateful for today?
Okay, today I'm very grateful for the mountains because I've played in the mountains all day, and it is one of my favorite places to spend my time.
That's a good gratitude, JoJo. My gratitude is that you're finally on the podcast because this has been over a year in the making. I've been trying to convince Joe to get on here. So that's definitely my gratitude for today. Okay, so I wanted to kind of start off this episode. I wanted you to kind of share a little bit. I want to basically go back to where it all started, which is your childhood. So I want you to share a little bit to the people to give them some perspective of kind of how you were raised, how you grew up, kind of how would you describe your childhood?
Well, I'm one of 6 children that grew up in a fairly ethnic household. It was an Italian Catholic household. I have 4 brothers, 1 older and 3 younger, and I have 1 older sister. We went to public schools until high school, and then went to a private high school before attending college and then medical school.
And so how would you describe your quality of life, I guess, during your upbringing?
I would say my quality of life was a loving home, but somewhat chaotic since we were 8 of us living in a 900 square foot home, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom in the inner city, so to speak. So we did what you do in the inner city, meaning we rode a bicycle maybe around the streets. We played public sports such as Little League baseball or Pop Warner football. And then we had side jobs. We did general jobs like a paper route with my older brother and I. He was 12, I was 9, and we delivered 110 papers. And then as we got into high school, we got more jobs where we did maybe light convenience store kind of work, sandwich shops, and worked at a secondary machine shop in the summers, and basically earned our money for our recreation and played around with your brothers and sisters in the neighborhood.
Right, from a very young age. So you basically had to work for everything you had in your childhood. You guys, it's not like you guys were going hungry, but you were not, grandma wasn't buying your ski pass and whatever, correct?
Correct. No, it wasn't even an option.
Right.
We didn't have the same luxuries that are in the world today. Cell phones didn't exist. Computers didn't exist. Recreating was more, as I said, in the neighborhood, empty building lots, or in the cemetery that was nearby. We would ride our bikes in there and play games in the open fields within the cemetery. But the world was different. Every child didn't have a car. Every child didn't have all the Apple products. We didn't have iPods and the individual computers and cameras and cell phones and multiple toys. It simply just didn't exist. So you weren't tempted by that.
And I'm curious, do you remember how much you were making on your paper route when you were 9?
Maybe $6 a week.
That's so crazy, but a 9-year-old is so little.
Right. My older brother was 12, and so when he became 13, then I became 10, and we would deliver papers each morning before school. On some occasions, when it was raining and just whatever the chaos was or the struggle was, sometimes my mother would drive a station wagon down the middle of the street because they were secondary roads with not nearly the traffic you have today, and we would run back and forth to the back of the station wagon and grab a handful of newspapers, and we would run door to door, and she would kind of keep rolling slowly up the street. And that's how we would get it done when we had to do that each day before school.
So as you were a kid, because again, it's not like you were really living in abundance, I guess, materialistically and financially, do you feel like you always kind of had, and again, I think especially with your siblings, there's a very big gap, a very big variance between those that seem very driven and goal-focused, have that intrinsic motivation, and others of your siblings that don't necessarily have that same grit. Do you feel like you kind of always had kind of this innate drive and this kind of innate discipline in comparison to your siblings? Or do you feel like that was something that maybe developed as you aged and saw more? Or do you think it was maybe something that was instilled in you early on because you had to get these jobs so young? Do you know what I mean?
I do understand. Yeah, I do. A lot of it is that you become a product of your environment. My older brother is exceptionally intelligent and is very focused and driven, very a good student. So he sort of helped drag me along. And then the farther you get in that arena, the more you either strive to excel or you fall out of that bucket. And I didn't really fall out of the bucket. The more I just strive to excel. It's more like there's a saying called it takes knives of a similar hardness to stay sharp. And that's really what it was. You either align yourself with better people knowing that it's going to make you better, or you sort of quit and fall off the path because it's an easier path. And I just elected to stay in it as long as I could, simply knowing that the alternative was the obvious alternative, fall out and just be mediocre.
Right. And so I think the biggest thing that fascinates me about your story is that you did come from so little. And I think poverty mindset and lack mindset kind of fascinates me in a way, because traditionally, people just develop a certain association with success and kind of with money based on what they grew up with, because that's kind of what they always only knew. So that's just kind of what their expectation is of like, oh, I would never be that person that lives in that house. Like, I'm not that type of person. I'm the ones that stays in the inner city or whatever with, a 2-bedroom home or whatever the case may be. Just usually they adopt this mindset of like, that's them. I'm not that type of person that is a successful individual. So I'm so intrigued of how, with growing up with so little, what made you feel like you had it in you to eventually achieve success? Like, what made you feel like you could kind of break that cycle in your family, or believe that you could be as successful as you are today? Like, was it something that was conscious, or was it something that it was kind of almost built little by little as you achieved a little bit, your confidence slowly started to scale?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot interwoven into your statement or question. Number one, I mean, success is defined very differently by every individual. Success can be determined by how much money you have. It could be determined by how happy you are. It could be determined by if you did the most philanthropic type of duties and felt rewarded in that regard. So I think we're going to have to use success as a generic term to say reaching your goals, I guess, and that's the way I would probably say it's safest for me to answer the question. But I clearly think the answer is in the question, and that's that you talked about mindset. And to me, I still to this day believe that if something was created by a human, then all humans have the ability to get it. So that's the way I live my life. Now, it doesn't mean I can do the same athletic accomplishment of a 20-year-old because I'm 62 years old, or it also doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to earn the amount of wealth of another person who did it, but to somewhere in between of whatever the line that you are implying that exhibits success. I feel like we all have the ability to get to that line if you are able to live, breathe, eat, sleep, and digest the mindset that you can get there. And really, that's what it is. It's the mindset. It comes out of believing, then doing, then failing, then doing it again. There's a saying, you only fail when you stop or when you quit. So I just feel like if you never quit, you never really failed because you're still in the game. Mm-hmm. And that's how I did it. I just kept feeling like I'm still in the game, therefore I'm still moving forward. And it just seems to, I guess I don't want to say it seems to work, because I still live it. I still wake up at night worrying about, am I going to make my goal? But I'm still in the game, so I don't feel like I didn't make it yet. I just feel like I'm still trying to make it.
You're in the process of it. And that's one of my favorite quotes. You only fail once you give up. And I actually did a whole podcast episode on that quote because it's so good. But it's really so true. It's like if you know what I mean, it's like you're still just, it doesn't mean that you're finished yet. You're just still in the process of doing it. So who's to say that you failed if you're like, no, I'm actually still working to achieve it. I think that's one of like a great quote for people to really take home and to have them keep going, because so many people define failure in so many different ways, when the thing that they don't realize is they're almost the very person declaring that they failed and to take them out of the game, I guess. But
right. And by the same token, I think they're the only person that can establish whether or not they reach success.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that their success can be making a little bit of progress. I mean, some people progress faster than others, but some semblance of moving forward defines progression, and that's what you have to sort of. That's what someone has to be able to accept. Is that enough progression to stay in the game?
Right. And it is like a self-intrinsic thing. Like what you're saying, it is up to you. It's not up to necessarily like society standards or no one else can tell you. It's like what you feel, I guess, inside and what is fulfilling you. But I want to still circle back to this mindset thing because I just am so, because you're one of the most, like you are the most motivational, inspirational, dedicated person I've ever known, and I truly believe will ever know. And so it's like, for me, I find it's like, well, duh, of course I have this kind of prosperous headspace because you've been such an integral part of showing me and teaching me what is possible and how important it is to have this certain mindset. Like, I truly think there's so much potential and I have so many options because you've told me there's so much potential and I have so many options, and you have to keep the goals at the front of your mind and that's how you're going to achieve them. And then you've showed me that in your life. So it's like, that's why it's like, doesn't make sense to me as to how growing up the way you did, not having a super present, award-winning father, like I get the mindset thing, and I agree with you, it's so important, but how did you develop that? I don't know if you even have an answer to that. That's why I'm like, is it something instilled in you? Because like for me, I think a big part of it was I'm so blessed the way I was raised by you, but like so many people listening have absent parents, they don't have people guiding them, and so they're like, well, I don't really know if I'm worthy or capable of achieving success, and so it's like, you didn't have a parent telling you that, but you told me that, so that's why I believe in it. So where did you grasp it? And that's what I'm talking about, of how you broke such a big generational cycle in your family where you really broke out. I mean, especially in comparison to your siblings and how you grew up, like you really led the pack and completely pivoted in a different direction that I think is just so fascinating.
I mean, it's a very tough question. I mean, what gives someone a drive from inside? I mean, I think number one, you have to believe. Number two, you have to really want it. I think there is merit in struggles. I think there's merit in odd jobs. I think there's merit in becoming a believer that you can do it. And that's learned through small victories and trials and tribulations. But eventually you have to realize, A, that you are the one that made you succeed, and also you're the one that causes your failure. So, I mean, how did I win that battle of sort of mind over matter? Mm-hmm. It really just became sometime in my life. I had a football coach. They just told me, you have to want it, and whatever the it is, but you have to want it. In football, that was a victory, a game. But we think of these sports and these endeavors as insignificant, but they're really not. They're mini milestones, and you start to realize that if I can outwork someone or outwork the competition, I can make up for my lack of talent or my average talent. Mm-hmm. And there's a saying that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And you have to believe that these sayings exist for a reason. So the only thing you can control is your level of hard work, your mm-hmm. input. You can't always control your output. But generally speaking, you think you are blessed maybe because of, for lack of a better term, that you quote unquote had a good upbringing. But I think I was blessed because I had enough progress that it kept me still in the game. So I believed in myself, and that was my blessing, that if I worked hard enough, I would get there. And it doesn't mean every time and in every hurdle I succeeded. It just meant in most of them I succeeded, and in more than the ones I didn't succeed in, I guess. And then you just keep moving forward. It's that simple. I always feel like I'm going to pull my end of the yoke no matter what. And when I pulled my end of the yoke, we got to the point where we had to be.
I've never heard that one. Pull your, what do you say?
Well, it's
Pull
like
your
the yoke is sort of like in a biblical time, like the oxen you would be pulling. The yoke is like the harness, so to speak.
Oh. It's another great quote Joey says is to just keep kicking the pebble down the road.
Well, I mean, that one,
not the same?
it's not the same. I mean, that one is what I'm saying, keeping your options open. I'm more like saying, you when we were a kid walking to school, and kids don't walk to school anymore, we would walk to school, and you were just out of boredom when you had to walk 15 minutes to school. We could do that then. Now you can't because of fears for children and timeliness and school buses. But we would kick a pebble, and you would just out of boredom, you kick 2 or 3 pebbles, and one would go far, one went in the ditch, and one was an okay shot. So the one that went in the ditch, you were like, that one's gone. So now you had 2 pebbles to kick, and you kicked the one that was mediocre, and maybe that one was your next best kick, and the one that went far wasn't so great. So you would play 2 or 3 pebbles down the road, and that's sort of a different saying of just keeping your options open. And I believe that. I think you need to work hard at your main goal, but you also have to have a backup plan. And I mean, there's a lot of different ways of thinking about it. I don't want to get too sidetracked because some people would tell you that a secondary plan is a distraction from the initial plan. So I just think it needs to be whatever works for that particular person to keep themselves in the game.
I just always thought that meant, I'm going to be honest, when you told me that, I thought that meant like just keep making moves, like keep kicking the pebble down the road.
Well, it is. It's keeping your options open. Yeah.
I just thought you meant like keep persevering on it. Anyways, okay, kind of changing gears, but not really. I want to ask you this question straight out, which I feel like I may be really beating the dead horse with this question, but because I feel like you're like a science experiment to me, Joe. But anyways, what do you think was the biggest piece that got you to where you are today? Like, do you think it was your mindset? Do you think it was simply your pure like perseverance, not giving up? Do you think it was your work ethic? Was it networking? Was it taking risks? And I mean in your big scale, like whatever you feel like was kind of just like overall a big pivotal moment from, where you were to where you are today. Are these like so loaded questions?
Well, they're challenging questions because they're not simple answers. I really believe if you really want me to narrow it down,
I would love for you to narrow it down. Like if you, I want you to pretend like you're talking to 20-year-old you. Like if they're
believe it's who you associate with, in the people in your life at the time. I think it really makes a lot of sense to flock to people that you believe are high achievers, good quality individuals, good work ethic, people that tend to strive for excellence, whatever that may be. If it's in sports, it's a good athlete who's training well. If it's in academics, it's someone who's working hard. And if it's in vocation, then the person that seems to have acquired the proper skill set. In my mind, I tried to be as accomplished at as many different areas as I could be. And that's where the analogy back to kicking the pebbles down the road are. I didn't just play one area. I didn't just try athletics or just try academics or just try vocational type things. That's what I meant when I said I kicked 2 or 3 pebbles down the road, and sometimes more, and I kept playing as many pebbles as I could. And it's the same way that I did here. I associated when I played sports with the better athletes on the team. When I was in the academic classroom, I tried to associate with the most intelligent kids. When I worked, I tried to work with the most successful people. So if I had to narrow it down, I would say probably the single most important ingredient is to surround yourself with people who you respect and feel that they've acquired the excellence in that area.
Right, and push you to be better. I mean, because that's another quote, like you are the sum of the top 5 people you spend the most time with. I think that it's like you're putting yourself in when you said earlier, you're a product of your environment. It's like when you're in a prosperous environment, I feel like that inevitably helps you have better work ethic, help you persevere, help you, be motivated to do things as like an inevitable result of being in that prosperous environment. Because there's another kind of quote or concept that like, the most perfect, beautiful, amazing flower can't bloom in a poor environment, right? You got to put it where there's proper sunlight, where there's water, all that sort of stuff. And so it's kind of the same thing. It's not that there's anything wrong with the flower. It's more so it's not in the correct environment to flourish and prosper, and putting yourself in an environment with individuals who are, ahead of you or just have the same goals as you can help you prosper and kind of help almost activate those character traits needed and help you stick with those action steps needed to get to where you want to be in life.
I absolutely agree with that. And it does not mean easy. Nowhere did we say with people that are easy. Mediocrity loves mediocrity. It doesn't, therefore no one is making someone else look bad. Mm-hmm. So when you're surrounding yourself with high achievers, you're working hard to measure up, and in many days you're not where you need to be. But at the end of the day, you're farther ahead than where you would have been without that environment or without those people.
But then I think there was also a very, we were talking about the other day, a pretty pivotal moment in your career when you kind of decided to go off and start your own thing, kind of before you even met your current business partner. What made you kind of what was that motivating factor behind that move? Because I think that was a very huge move in where you are today.
Well, I mean, I think what the pivotal moment is when you realize that your vision is different than the vision of the people you're aligned with. And that becomes the first sort of awakening, that essentially you're speaking a different language, for more of a metaphor than real terms. But your vision is different. And so then you have to say, okay, can I live with that vision or not? Or is it holding you back from potentially prospering? And again, prospering isn't only based on monetary terms. It's whatever we're defining success and prosper is. But when you get to that point, then there's that, you will tend to sit there for a while and ruminate on it. And there's a lot of fear, apprehension, reluctance, uncertainty. And then at one point or another, you tend to feel enough confidence, or in my case, I looked at my least common denominator, essentially. Could I feed my family? Could I measure to where I am today if I even failed at my own quote unquote vision? And once you sort of believe that, that's when it was time to cut ties and move on. And I guess I was essentially correct, because once I moved on my own, my vision was better or correct in assuming I could do or be more than what I was when I was associated with the pre-existing situation.
Right. I just think that's a huge reason for your success, and it's something that really inspires me. Like I feel like that's something you say, always move the needle or something. Like I just feel like you never got comfortable. You were always like, how can I expand? How can I grow? How do I improve? How do I upscale? And it's like, that's something that I think so many people just get comfortable and they're like, like this is good enough, which again depends on what you're valuing, but it's like there
is another saying that the way to avoid monotony or boredom is to strive for higher goals. Mm-hmm. And that's the way, that is absolutely what I believe. And it happens often in professionals. When you're in college and you're striving to get into graduate school or professional school, in my case it was medical school, you got A's in your college, but then the real goal was to get into medical school. So then you get in. Once I got into medical school, I went through medical school, and then the goal was to get to the career path that I wanted, sort of spoke the subspecialty. And then from there, it was, okay, now I'm going to build a practice. And then after that, it was like, okay, I could have been fine there, but then it was to acquire real estate or other measures of financial security. And then after that, it was, develop interpersonal development and running a business. And so there was a time when you could either sit and be satisfied, or you can strive for another goal. And in my case, it's all about what I'd say reinventing myself every 10 years. That's what I try to do with my life, is every 10 years or so, I try to figure out the next best Joe that I can be.
Right. It's just continuing to expand. It's continuing to up level. It's continuing to be better. And I think that carries over into so many areas of your life, which is why you're an inspiring individual. Like, that doesn't just stop in the workplace. It's like with everything. Like, you cannot be around Joe Catania and be complacent. Like, Joe will make you feel really uncomfortable really fast if, you're not, striving to be your best self, which is what this podcast is, evolving to your best self.
My intention is not to make someone else feel inferior or inadequate or not their best self. It's
their potential.
I mean, I guess I would say I live and I lead by example.
100%.
I mean, that is 100%. What I believe. I never ask more of an individual around me than I'm willing to invest in myself. Mm-hmm. And I can honestly tell you that as your father, I always have said I will walk the walk with you, but it doesn't mean I'm not walking my walk. So I do your walk with my walk. And that's really what I believe, is that I have to be able to be the best I can be in order to expect other people to be the best they can be. Right. And I believe that. And I can tell you, even if we want to sort of open up this podcast to the deep inner core, mm-hmm. I'm a better dad now than I was when I was 30 years old, no question. Right. 30 years old, and I would tell a 20-year-old this when you ask, there's a time in your life when you have to be selfish. And at 30 years old, I knew that my selfishness was actually meant to be more generous and gracious, because I knew that if I didn't pay at 30, I wasn't going to be able to give back at 60.
It was selfish today for an unselfish tomorrow.
Correct. And that's a perfect way to put it. And so when you were younger, I guess I expected other people to nurture you while I continued to forge ahead, so that your needs in 20 were able to be met by me at that time.
Right.
And and because of that, I circle back and say, okay, it's time for Joe to be a better Joe. And I think I'm a better listener. I have a lot more compassion. I tend to be more philanthropic, where I guess meaning that I try to give back more. I guess I didn't pronounce it correctly, but that's what I'm living for, and that's what I want to do now in this last decade of my life.
Right.
Is to be more involved with helping other people reach their goals and dreams.
Oh, Jojo. This is retirement, Jojo. But not there yet, but soon. I think that was also a perfect segue, because this was something I did want to touch on, and I wasn't sure if we are going to have time on, but I wanted to talk about being a parent, because there actually are quite a few parents that listen to this podcast episode, believe it or not, / some people that are older than me that are like on their way to have children, and kind of sticking with this main theme of kind of breaking through these generational cycles of like how you were raised. It's like, I just personally feel like the way you live now is literally night and day from how you were raised, from my perception of how you were raised. And so again, you didn't necessarily have an award-winning father figure, and so, but now I think like you are truly the most present and like ruthlessly loyal father that I've ever seen, like even with my friends and everything, like with the example that I've seen of other people, I guess I should say. And like, what do you feel, what helped you, get to this point? Again, was that something that was conscious when you were growing up and you were like, damn, Dad, that was kind of crappy. Like, I want to do this differently when I have children? Or like, how were you able to kind of break that cycle growing up and be such a present, loyal father that your father necessarily was?
Well, I mean, I think you're underselling
Grandpa,
my parents, your grandmother and grandfather. They are incredibly present, and they were incredibly present. But it was relevant to the time. Mm. And when I grew up, again, as I mentioned, we didn't have cell phones. So the saying was, no news is good. It was, no news is good news, mm-hmm. meaning you didn't call them unless you had a problem. It didn't mean they weren't on standby. It's just there has actually been a polar shift since cell phones have come up, that we text and call and communicate so regularly that lack of communication implies a problem, right, or implies absenteeism. So I don't want to be measured to my parents, because I still think they are great parents, and God bless them, they're all still alive, and we have a lot of longevity in our lives, and they're still very involved, and I don't care where I am or what we're doing. I can count on my mother and father to still do all they can do to help us. But that's just different, sort of a different subject. Right. But I don't want you to feel like I didn't have a good example is what I'm getting at. I don't want you to feel like I didn't have a good example. I do have a good example, and I did have a good example. It was just displayed differently based on the tools at hand, if that makes sense. So take that out of the equation. Now to answer your question of how do I stay involved and how do I lead, I truly believe it's harder for the younger generation today to succeed than it was when I was a younger person.
But as a parent? Or do you mean in...
No, where I'm getting at is where it's going is I don't think the younger generation can be left to succeed without more guidance. When I did it, I was more in a track of staying on the track to success, which meant my individuality. But as a parent, because I've educated and I've stayed connected with the world, I think the younger generation needs more parenting help. And that's just my philosophy. There's many parents that don't believe that, and they feel like they made it on their own, so their child should make it on their own. So I guess I'm going to ask you to rephrase or funnel the question, but it is a belief issue more than anything else, is that as you kids have gotten more self-sufficient, you have a longer leash or a longer set of reins, if you will. Not really a leash, that implies something different, but more reins. And so I'm not as involved as you think. I'm just continuing to play backup for when you need me.
I think you're involved, y'all. I call you at the drop of a hat for everything. I guess my question was, and again, I really didn't mean that at like a jab of grandma and grandpa at all. I just meant like, I just feel like you are a very, very present, involved father that I was under the impression, I'm not saying they were bad parents by any means, but I didn't think that grandpa was as present of a father as you are today. But you're saying that was more so just a difference in the times.
I think it's a lot of it at different times, but I also think you've said it best, really, when you joke around with me and you say that I bore my 4 best friends. That is true. Mm-hmm. I truly enjoy the company and love the involvement of my children. There has never been anything I've done in my life that isn't enriched or enhanced with my children being there with me. That's really the honest truth. And I don't know how else to say it. I don't enjoy skiing alone better than I do when I have my kids. I don't enjoy racing more than I do when I have Lucas there. I don't enjoy our dinner by myself more than I do when I have my kids. I don't enjoy anything better than when I have my kids there. It doesn't mean I'm unhappy or I don't have enjoyment when they're not there. It's just always better with my family and my children there. So to me, it's not a lot of work to be involved because that's what I live for every day.
But like what I'm trying to say is not everyone feels that way. And so it's like I guess I don't know what to say about that, but I mean, to me, it's not. You just were meant to be a dad, Joe.
Yeah, I guess it's not a lot of work. Life is about family. Life is about your children. Life is about life, and that's what life really is to me. I mean, everything I do and did is to make me better at being involved with my family. I live to lay my head down on the pillow knowing that I was the best Joe I could at that time, whatever that means. Mm-hmm. I feel like I have to answer to God, however that exists, my children, so that they feel proud of me, and to my parents, so they feel that they raised a good citizen. That's it. Everyone else is secondary.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also kind of comes back to, I mean, our whole family is so family oriented. Like grandma and grandpa, your siblings, like we just have a very family oriented family. And I kind of talk about that quite a bit. But it really is all that is all that matters. And I also get that it kind of extrinsic motivational factor of like wanting to make the important people in your life proud.
Absolutely. I would say that I have a handful of close, best friends that I love in my life. I don't have a large network, but of the network I have, it's a very tight network.
Mm-hmm. Same here, dog. Because Cedar, let's say I said your handful of friends, or is that four, the five, the four, the handful, those kids? No, literally though. But I say that, I mean, even now, like none of us kids have like a raging social circle. This is getting off topic, but yeah, just because we just value family so much. It's hard also when I struggle to feel like there's anyone that's going to be more important than like your blood, than your family. It's hard for me to ever think that I'm ever going to change that. But we're blessed to feel that way though, because some people just have really bad relationships with their family members, or they just don't see any, no one puts any effort into foster that. Like growing, that was always the effort to foster that. Like as kids were doing things, they're always with their cousins, going to grandma's, like
it is
prioritized.
It is true. That's what is the focus for sure. But with that said, you have to pursue your individual interests, I guess I would say it like that. Your individual interests to create the individuality and your pursue your own self, but it doesn't have to come at the expense or in lieu of the quality time with your family or the close friends that you have. I mean, there's a saying, friends are the family you choose. And so there should be a few of those people in your life as well. But what's the right number? I think 20 is too many. I think one might be too few, but I think probably somewhere in the 3 to 5 range is probably the right number.
So what do you think was kind of what would you, I guess, advice would you give to any parents listening? What do you think is one of the main, I don't even really know how to phrase it. What do you think one of the main attributes or character traits, or one of the best ways you need to show up for your child to be a good parent? What do you think has been most important to be a parent?
I truly believe there's a few. Number one is you have to treat your child with respect. That is the number one. You have to be a very good listener, and you have to let your child express their viewpoints, because they are very, very intelligent young people that just grow to be intelligent, big people. And I think it's important to tell your child that you love them right up in those top 3 things. So you have to respect them, listen to them, and love them. And if you do that, those simple 3 things, which are probably the hardest 3 things to do at the same time, you will have a very good relationship with a child as a parent. Respect them, listen to them, and love them. It doesn't mean you don't discipline them. It doesn't mean you don't get your chance to tell them things. And it doesn't mean you don't have arguments. But you can do all of those things with respect, with listening, and with love. And that's it.
Joe. That's beautiful. No, but for real, because I also think we have a very interesting relationship where I do literally classify Joe as like a friend, but I'm also still freaking scared if shit hits the fan. Like so I feel like there's been such a interesting line you've been able to create of really being friends with your children, but also like still having that line of discipline and respect and authority still as being a father, which I find to be a very delicate dance that you've somehow managed to do well as we've gotten older. Because Joe and I are besties, but then I know he'll lay it down if he needs to. So I think that's an interesting dynamic, and I do think that's also kind of important with parenting. It's like have that friendly relationship, but not too friendly where they don't now I don't respect you. You know what I'm saying? Or see you as someone as with authority and with wisdom.
Well, right. And if you lay the right foundation, the shift as a child gets older is more into friendship.
Yeah.
But the respect has to be there even when they're younger. And you get that respect by listening, and you love them as you see how they've grown into an adult. And so it's really a process, but the same points exist throughout the life of your relationship. Respect, listen, and love. That's it.
Yeah, that was definitely so well said, and I think a lot of people can find a lot of value in that. It seems very simplistic, but the simple things are really the big things that really accumulate into a lot. But so I kind of also want to switch gears one last time as we kind of get into the final leg of this episode. Not only when you were building your business, you were also building your tree trunk legs and getting straight in the gym. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your dedication to fitness, because all these amazing attributes that you have of your work ethic, your discipline, your perseverance, like your hunger to expand and betterment, which is another key word on this podcast and in the Livfiit brand. Like, you've always had that, not only in the workplace, not only with being a better father, not only being a better, son, the best son that you can be and all that sort of stuff. You also translated that into your fitness, and you've been working out for what? Lifting weights, lifting iron for 40 years? More?
More than that. We started out back in high school. So again, you're in high school, you graduated 18, so probably somewhere in the 14 to 16-year-old age group. It just evolved the whole existence of fitness, and
now it's a whole like industry, a whole everything.
Well, yeah, and again, we had a bar with steel plates. I mean, let's face it. And actually, what really was one of the earliest parts of fitness was when the company that is still in existence today, called Nautilus, they were the first weight machine type equipment, and they came up with a cam system where it had variable resistance as you move through the motion. But the reason I bring that up is that started when I was around 15, 16 years old. And so that's when it became one of the earlier fitness facilities. And one of our coaches at that time in high school had started a fitness facility, and so we started using that. But more importantly, is your question is, what is it, or how do I balance it? And I
I never asked that, but go for it.
No, you did. You asked something about how what made the drive for it.
Oh, okay.
Am I mistaken?
No, I mean, it's on here anyway. Keep going.
But the point is again, there's a saying that a sound body builds a strong mind, or something like that.
I forgot about that one.
Well, and you can't be your best self if you're not a complete self. So that's really the way I look at it. And I believe, again, this is going to be fairly judgmental, and I apologize, but someone who has, okay, let's call it that, passion versus judgmental, is that if someone does not have enough self-respect to maintain a degree of fitness, by eating right, sleeping right, exercising properly, it tells me that there's other deeper seated inconsistencies in their life. So I truly believe, and again, as I mentioned before, I live by example. I believe it's important. I don't think you're going to be more intelligent if you only study books and never exercise. Now, that doesn't mean the night before a test or when you're studying for your big exam, you don't miss a workout or an exercise class that day. But that doesn't give you the lifelong excuse to have no regard for your body. You're building a business, you need to put more work hours and exercise hours, absolutely makes sense. But you don't go to 0 hours, just like you don't go to all work hours. You still have to balance life as it exists. So to me, I always found, and this gets to your question of how did I manage it, I found I performed better when I included exercise in my life. I needed less sleep. It drove me to eat better. I felt stronger. My stamina was better. My mental acuity was sharper. And my motivation was just that much more vivacious. Right. And so exercise is medicine. It's simply medicinal for me.
Yeah. No, and I think that's huge. And I think that's what people struggle with, is their association with it. They see it's like this chore, what needs to be done. But you're saying kind of the opposite of, like, it's completely elevated and magnified in every other, aspect of your life. Like, it's what allowed you to be your best self in other areas of your life, whether it's in your business, being a better partner, being a better dad. Like, it elevated other areas of your life. And I think that's what's so powerful about fitness. It's not this like drab thing that you have to do. That's this task. That's a chore. It's like, yes, it's something that needs to be done, but it's something for the benefit of you at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I truly believe it's part of the recipe. Right. You can't make cookies without sugar, even though I haven't ever baked cookies. I'm just guessing you can.
We made brownies last night.
Yeah, right. But I'm saying is you can't be your best self without mind and body focus. And that's really what you're doing. Yeah, and again, I would never profess myself to be above anyone else's exercise, nor would I profess that I'm a better businessman than someone else, nor would I say I'm more intelligent than someone else. I truly believe hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Mm-hmm. And so I lay awake at night going, what can Joe control? Joe can control hard work. I wasn't given great talent. I wasn't given great intellect. I wasn't given great aptitudes, but I can motivate myself. Right. And that's the first step in success is getting on the ladder to start climbing up it.
Right. And I think that's what's so powerful about fitness also in general is that it gives you and it instills these character traits that are needed that translate to other areas of your life that allow you to keep succeeding and climbing that ladder. And it's like, yeah, no, it's not about how much weight you can push. It's not about what your body looks like. It's not about who has, more defined abs. Like it's about the character traits that inevitably kind of sculpts you, like the person it sculpts you into when you are consistent with fitness and actually have made progress in it. Like the only way to do it is to basically pay your dues. Right. To really, you can't buy it, you can't cheat it. You just have to put your time in.
Yeah, I love it. That's exactly right.
But so then
right.
It, like, do you know what I'm saying? It like curates you. It curates your character into, as a result of it, and then that's what bleeds into other areas of your life. And so I feel like that's what you're saying. It's like,
and that is exactly what I'm saying when I tell you that if I interview someone for a job or I visit with someone for an event or I'm trying to sort of make an assessment of an individual, someone who is so deconditioned, I feel their level of self-respect is low enough that it concerns me.
Right.
And that's what I would say. It is concerning. It isn't the end all, but it's concerning. And so the one thing you're talking about, fitness, and I say this to you at 24 years old, if I can disclose your age, you still make gains. When you're 62 years old, the true motivation is doing it at 62 because every day in the gym, I'm a little weaker than I was the day before. So the easiest answer for me is just don't go anymore. But I view it just the opposite. I view it as more of a need to go today than I had ever before in my life because I feel like I'm just sliding backwards. But if I can slow the decay and slow the slide, I'm doing better than I would if I didn't go. So I go with zero reward where you can go with gains as a reward.
Like, oh, maybe this will change and this will change. And I have more like short-term kind of things, short-term changes I have the potential to see to keep me kind of going.
Right.
So do you think basically what keeps you going now is just to try to uphold your longevity and health?
What keeps me going now?
So I can do my heli.
What keeps me going now is to aspire to be able to stay involved in life. I just don't want to die on the sidelines. As I say, and I've said this in other commentaries I've been invited to say, is that I'm going to earn the rocking chair. I am not going out of this world without a fight. And I think I need to have all my faculties. I need to have a sharp mind and a strong body and a whole lot of desire because it's really easy to get complacent with early bird dinner and a TV show and go to bed. And that is not the way I'm planning to go out.
Don't get me all hyped, Joe. That got me juiced, Joe. My God.
That is just what's inside. I don't know. I don't make that up. I would even go a step further.
Pure grit that I always talk about.
I would say that's why
I don't. You're just hungry.
I don't need social media to prove. I don't show what I do on social media.
Character is what you do and no one's watching. And now you're the one that's still doing it when you ain't got an audience no more.
Right. And I don't need a cheerleader because I am my own motivator and I started it and I'm going to finish it that way.
And I think that's almost, it's something kind of fascinating. I feel like it's something that you almost just got to digest and adopt the mindset in life. It's kind of like you just got to adopt. How do I even phrase this? Sometimes it's just, you got to want to be better just simply for the pure fact of being better. Like there's so much external reward and gratification in our, like some people are like, why did I do that? What's in it for me? Do you know what I mean?
I got it.
And they kind of want some sort of like, oh, here's money, here's a better body, here's a boyfriend, here's fame, here's, you got a page in a magazine cover. And it's like so many people need this incentive to do something. And it's like, I feel like really, this is kind of a good one. I feel like the only way not the only way, but if you can digest this and adopt this earlier of just doing things simply for the sake of being better, like I feel like so many people would be amazed at where they end up going in life by stop needing to wait for this certain reward. You know what I mean? And just simply get it done for the sake of getting it done and being better for themselves. And then I've been thinking about this quote this whole time of this episode, character is what you do and nobody's watching. Because when you said your quote from the basketball coach or whatever, your football coach, I think you did tell me characters what you do when I was watching, but I also learned it from Coach Evans, my basketball coach. And I was young when he said that. I think I was in like 8th grade, and I still remember the day he said that character is what you do when nobody's watching. And from that point forward, I really think that's been something for me, at least, that keeps me going. Like, no one knows that I make my bed every morning, or no one knows like little things that I do, like say my affirmations. You know, it's for me. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think that's been something that's allowed me to stay with my own goals. Like even though I'm at such a small scale, it's like I've always remembered that quote of like, you're doing it just simply because it's the right thing to do, essentially. And that's kind of what I also feel about you going to the gym and being better. It's like, that's kind of just the right thing to do, is to be the best thing that you can be. And if all of humanity did what they could to be the best person they could be, our world would look so much different. And then when everyone says we got to change the world, and you're looking at this collective, we need to start individually. And that's why it's like these little conversations that seem so trivial when you're like, well, what do I have to say? It's like this little conversation. If only 10 people who listen to this say, damn, like I'm going to start doing the best that I can every day tomorrow, like that is how we start to change the world in the individual scale that eventually impacts, it accumulates to the collective.
You nailed it. Yeah, changing the world starts with changing yourself.
100%.
Period. That's it. And I do believe that if you're looking for external accolades, as soon as you don't reach the accolade or the tangible trophy, money, you name it, or notoriety dissipates, what's left? So to me,
and then it's unsustainable.
Exactly. To me, it's not about the tangible assets. To me, it's about the interpersonal fulfillment. That is the priceless reward.
Right.
It's the internal fulfillment.
Right. And I think in order to make any progress with anything, you have to be consistent with it. I always kind of use the analogy, like for a car to get to A to B, the wheels have to consistently turn. They didn't turn 3 times and you made it from New York to Florida. Like it's going over and over and over again. And so it's like, basically what I'm trying to say is success, whatever way that defines you, any goal that you have set for yourself, you need to be consistent with it to achieve it. And so it's the little things that you're doing every day in and day out. Like that, I feel like that's a kind of common quote or concept that people think it's like this big life-changing moment that got them some success, but really it's their micro habits that they did day in and day out that slowly accumulated into their success that they have now. And so you kind of, in order to stick with those habits day in and day out, you need to lose this expectation of this big reward every time you do it. You kind of just got to put your head down and keep grinding it, again, simply because it's the right thing to do and for your own internal fulfillment. And that's what accumulates into success one day before you know it.
I agree. There's a saying, success is a journey, not a destination.
Oh, that's Joe's favorite. That one, that's going down with you, Joe. That's probably the most iconic one that you always say. And that's a good one, too, because that's the thing. So many people are like, I'm going to do this. Am I there yet? I'm going to do this. Am I successful yet? I'm going to do this. Am I a millionaire yet? And then you're never actually focused on the process of doing it. And what you're saying is the whole point of it is the process.
Right,
that's
it's the journey. Yes. And that's how someone that's 20 can be successful just as well, someone who's 60 can be successful, or someone like Warren Buffett at 89 is still successful. It's absolutely the journey and what you do along the way that defines success. You don't get off the bus at the stop that says success. It just doesn't happen like that.
Well, because what's kind of morbid, but like the only time there's a destination where you're stopping is when you're in the grave. You know what I'm saying? When you cross over. So it's like life, the very epitome of life is the fact that it is a process. So it's like if you're saying that you can't wait to reach the destination, then you're just rushing life to be finished. You know what I mean? And it's like, what's the point of that? It's like the whole journey is life itself. You know, that's exactly what it is. I think something that really made you just like accomplish all that you have in your life, whether that's in the gym, being a really good dad, or, you know, in your business, I think it was that you're just quite literally obsessed with being the don't chuckle. We always like to classify Joe as an extremist, to put it nicely. He doesn't.
But it's not
have
that
to do anything.
it's not. It's commitment. When I take care of my patients, when I take care of patients, I try to be committed to making their life better. When I exercise, I try to be committed to making that workout beneficial. When I play a sport, I try to be as proficient and excel as much as I can. So I don't live in a lazy fashion. I live in a committed, driven sense. I live with purpose. I guess that would what I would say.
Purpose and passion. But that's what I'm trying to say is that's an underlying theme of your character that has allowed everything in your life to come into fruition as it is and has manifested the way that it is.
I guess you're saying that from the outsider looking in. I don't do it to show anyone. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't have social media. I don't post things, quote unquote, whatever that means about my life. I live my life.
I know. I'm not saying to post it. I'm saying that's why you are living this life you are today, because of the theme and the mindset and the character that you've taken on every task in your life.
I guess if that's what it appears from the outside, then I guess you're right. I just would say to you, I live with a purpose. Today's Sunday morning. I woke up, I went to the gym. Then I trained at the water ramp park to be a better ski jumper in the moguls at 62 years old.
Olympics.
And then, well, you never know. There could be a senior Olympics. And then after that, I rode a bicycle 30 miles. And now I'm sitting here sort of talking with you. And there's still more on the list to get done today. And this is a Sunday off day.
But it's just the steady grind every day.
Right.
You're just showing up every day and you're doing the best that you can do.
I guess that's a good way to put it. We're showing up. I'm not just wasting a day.
The thing is, people underestimate that, but it's like that compounds to really big freaking things.
Yeah, I don't make space for an off day. There's no days I checked out. There's no mental health day, cheat day, off day, snow day, non-existent day. I just don't have those. I'm not ready for those yet. I will someday, but I'm just not ready yet.
I'm not convinced it's coming someday. I was waiting for that one to come out. That's another one of his iconic quotes. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for coming on the show. We're coming up at about an hour-ish. I think you're so inspiring, and I think you really you dropped some good ones. Joe's always notorious for dropping in some good quotes. Like when him and I are talking, he'll just drop it. He always goes, there's a quote that says, and then I perk up, and it just hits exactly what needs to be said. And then I always remember them, and they really are things that get me through. So I hope you guys found some bits of inspiration, clarity, encouragement in this episode and some words of wisdom for JoJo. My audience knows I always finish each episode with an affirmation, which I don't know if you did your homework and prepped an affirmation, so I'll go first. So my affirmation for today, because I thought it would be very fitting with the theme of this podcast episode, is I am ruthless in the pursuit of my goals. I am ruthless in the pursuit of my goals. That's pretty fitting.
Yeah, it is.
Joe's trying to frantically rack his brain for his own.
I guess I'm going to go back to our podcast, and I would just say my affirmation is that I intend to live with purpose.
That
was
so good. Say it again. Repeat it.
I intend to live with purpose. And
Joe,
that's it.
He's so effortlessly profound. That was so good, Joe. That was so fitting. All right, thank you so much. I feel like, when people normally have a podcast guest, they're like, where can we find you? What's your social media? Joe's incognito, even though I'd love for him to start social media, because even though he can be quite controversial, he's he knows what he believes in. He's passionate, and there's a lot to be said for that. But anyways, maybe one day we'll have Joe on again if I can wrangle him in. No one hold your breath, though. Anyways, thank you so much, Joe. Love you forever.
Thanks for having me, and I hope that I can shed some insight, because there is a lot to be lived in life, and when you get old and look back, a lot of the things that seemed to be so significant really are insignificant. So if you can push through and keep your eyes up, as I say, keep your eyes up on the horizon, you'll reach your goal. It's when you let the day-to-day bumps get you down that you fall off the path. So keep your vision up and keep your goals in sight.
Thank you so much, Joe. Never stop and dropping wisdom. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. If you did enjoy this podcast episode, don't forget to leave a little thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, or you can leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps so much with getting this podcast to reach more people and therefore impact more lives. We definitely want Joe's message to reach as many ears as possible. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a beautiful week, and I'll see you next epi. Peace out.